Now, if you're not familiar with the Syria dome UFO, Jeremy Corbell, there it is, and George Knapp
I hate this so much.
presented this to the world. Hello, world.
Oh, world.
This pixelated nightmare of a photo, supposedly from a fighter jet. Now, so some people are
No.
saying this is a mushroom cloud, and CJ, some people are comparing this, and once you see it, you can't unsee it, to Kermit the Frog.
Like if Kermit the Frog has a little bow tie, I can see that. Yeah.
No, well, it's the Kermit the Frog float, from the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. So you see there's little people on the bottom, they got the strings attached.
Oh.
They're just towing him along. But I actually asked my son, what do you think this looks like? And he literally said a frog.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic drew their plans against us.
Prior to your abduction, did you believe in UFOs or any sort of alien life form?
All things unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.
Hello, all you unexplained ones out there. We are so grateful to you for joining us. We are here to talk to you about giant UFOs today and a few other fun things. We are so grateful for your support of our show. You can go over to bigfootufo.com to find so many ways that you can interact with us and support us and keep us going. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Mounts. Hello.
Good evening, CJ. Thanks for joining me.
Yes, our poor co-host, Smitty Neves, man, he is under the weather today. So he's not joining us, but we wish him well. And we already have some people tuning in live. Somebody's saying hello from Australia. What time is it in Australia right now?
Very interesting, because we're going to be talking a lot about an Australian journalist tonight.
Oh, yes. So maybe we'll get some insider insight from Australia. Also, Australia's been on my mind lately because we went and saw that UNC basketball game Friday night, and 3 of the players on UC Riverside's team were from Australia. I couldn't believe that. I didn't know.
Indeed, UC Riverside brought the thunder from down under.
Yeah.
Hello, it's 11:36 a.m. in Australia.
Oh, wow.
Welcome to the show.
Proof that people do watch live during the middle of the day. We're just having this conversation.
Middle of their day, but that's a good point.
Yeah.
We could just cater to the Australian audience.
There you go. Well, welcome to the show. If you have any questions for us and you are joining us live, please do put them in all caps so that we know and we can bring them into our show. We do love to answer our audience members' questions, or certainly at least get you engaged with your comments. And I think we should dive right in. We've got a few things we want to tackle before we get into the giant UFO. So, Tim, what are you bringing to the table today?
Well, first of all, I want to ask everybody, please, one way you can help us defeat the evil algorithms out there is to comment wherever you're listening or watching. Comment, like, subscribe, follow, repost. It really helps the show out quite a bit when you do that. And CJ, one thing I wanted to bring up from this week, did you notice that SpaceX, Elon Musk, sent another rocket?
Yes.
Now, so this was a giant rocket, and its purpose was to go into orbit. And SpaceX actually has a contract with NASA, and NASA's paying them to build the next rocket, supposedly, that will land people on the surface of the moon. Now, guess what happened to the rocket?
Yeah, I'm not getting on that rocket anytime soon. Yeah.
Blown up. I tell you what, if you're volunteering or if you're getting paid to go on that rocket to the moon, good luck. Good luck to you.
There is not enough money in the world at this point to send me to the moon on one of those rockets. So this was the largest rocket ever, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. And by the way, I still want Elon Musk on the show because I would love to ask him, hey, do you have access to the most advanced technology available? I feel like certainly the answer would be yes, right?
Right.
What do you need to call up the folks from the 60s with the Apollo program? What's up? Do you have any of them on your advisory board? We believe, it seems, that we sent several groups of people to the moon in the 60s with the Apollo programs. But Elon, what's up? You got the most advanced technology in the history of the world, but you can't even send this thing into orbit, Earth orbit? What's happening here?
Or did we go to the moon?
Exactly.
That's
I
a whole
tell you,
other show that we've already done.
it is. But it does make you wonder, right? Like, seriously,
Yeah.
we can't do it. We cannot send anybody to the, this is proof, right? And so why everybody just automatically buys that we sent all these people to the moon in the 60s, but yet acknowledges we cannot literally send somebody to the moon right now, no matter how bad we want to. You're not going. I don't know how people, rationalize those two things, but hey,
Then
it is what it
again,
is.
we do have people on the International Space Station, which, same technology, right? So I guess what's with the giant rocket? Why is there so much more power? Why is there so much more technology going into the giant rocket? Is that really to get people to the moon, or are they thinking further? They're thinking Mars, right?
Maybe so, Mars, maybe a existing UFO base already on the moon. Your guess is as good as mine.
Now, is this the same rocket that they're trying to be able to bring back and land?
You would presume so, right? This one they hope to collect in the ocean somewhere, and so it was supposed to come back down, right? But
Well, because
that
I know
was
for
not
a
the
while
case.
they were working on technology that would launch and then would come back down and land on the Earth. Because if we're going to do real space travel, we have to be able to reuse our rockets.
Right. But again, Apollo landed on the moon and then performed a much more complicated task, and that is taking off from the moon and navigating all the way back here, which, by the way, one thing I thought interesting is how many modifications they've made to the launch pad of these rockets. Well, how do you guarantee what your launch pad is on the moon?
Yeah. True.
I mean, I don't know.
Do you take the launch pad with you? It reminds me of A League of Their Own, right? The way it works is the train moves, not the station. You just take the whole kit and caboodle up there.
We'll just shoot for the dark side of the moon and hope for the best. So, CJ, there were a couple other stories here in the last week or so. And what this show started off being originally about Ross Coulthart. And he's made
Coulthart.
And he's made a lot of statements about a giant UFO here recently. But then, of course, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp on their podcast Weaponized, they broke a picture of a UAP. So that's always a big story, right? New picture of a UAP. And we had to put that in. And by the way, this is kind of really rubbed people the wrong way, this picture, but we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. You want to go ahead and look into that, CJ?
Yes. Let's dive right in.
All right. So we're going to attempt to examine and analyze the Syria dome UFO and Ross Coulthart's giant UFO. Okay. Now, if you're not familiar with the Syria dome UFO, Jeremy Corbell, there it is, and George Knapp
I hate this so much.
presented this to the world. Hello, world.
Oh, world.
This pixelated nightmare of a photo, supposedly from a fighter jet. Now, so some people are saying this is a mushroom cloud, And CJ, some people are comparing this, and once you see it, you can't unsee it, to Kermit the Frog.
Like if Kermit the Frog has a little bow tie on, I can see that. Yeah.
No, well, it's the Kermit the Frog float, from the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. So you see there's little people on the bottom. They got the strings attached.
Oh.
They're just towing him along. But I actually asked my son, what do you think this looks like? And he literally said a frog. It does look like a big frog head, a big
Yeah.
Muppet frog or cartoon frog. But, and a lot of people are upset because this is so incredibly pixelated.
Right. I'm upset. If we're going to be upset, I'm going to join in on that. You're going to throw this at me and say this is your best evidence of a UFO.
Oh, yeah. This picture reminds me of some of the video games I played when I was a kid, the very first games on the Atari 2600. And so, basketball was a set, 2 block people dribbling a block and shooting at a block. Man, this is really what this reminds me of. And speaking of, CJ, so I talked quite a bit about this picture this week. And if we were to examine the probabilities of what's happening here, okay, what do you think is the probability, and I'm just wondering, that they take a picture and they purposefully pixelate it into something that we just can't construe, right? And then they just draw us in?
It depends on who they is, right? If we're talking about Jeremy Corbell, 0% chance.
You think so?
Yes, because he wants everybody to believe in UFOs. That's his whole thing. That is his thing. UFOs are real. Here's all of the proof that we have. This is not proof of a UFO to me.
No, you're right.
This is nothing. I could not tell you what this is a picture of. I can't even see, if you say, I really want you to envision the dome-shaped UFO in this picture. I cannot see it. So 0% chance that Jeremy Corbell is purposely releasing a pixelated image so that we can't quite figure out what it is.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad you said that because I would like to believe that, right? But I think the question some people are wondering is the unpixelated version of this something mundane, maybe a spy balloon, maybe a drone that we would obviously recognize? But you want people to tune in.
Maybe a smudge on a camera. I mean,
Right, it could be a smudge on the camera. A little backstory here. So apparently in 2021, December, over Syria, the fighter jets did engage 2 UAP. This is how they were first reported, as UAP. At least one of them, this one, apparently was fired on by a UK fighter jet with a missile. So this is also very reminiscent of the spy balloon and the Alaska UFO that was supposedly shot down, right? So one thing we don't know is how big is this thing?
I would say there's a lot of things we don't know.
Well, and because we don't know how big it is, we also don't... This could explain the pixelation, and that is distance of the fighter jet from this object.
Right.
Or zoom, right? Like we know if you zoom, things get more pixelated, but that's a little disheartening, right? Because we've seen photos, videos from space, basically, or orbit, from satellites, and just as clear as day, right? And is this really the best we can do from a fighter jet? This is the best we've got?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all of this is very frustrating because there's so little that you can really gather from this one picture. Do I want to believe that fighter jets came upon something that they couldn't identify and they wanted to shoot down? Sure, I would love to believe that. I would love to believe that there are things going on. This is not proof to me.
No, definitely not. Now, one thing that does lend a little bit of validity to the story is that apparently the pilots said that the second one, or one of them, the one they didn't fire at, sped away so fast they couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah. I mean, I would believe. Now, is there video or audio of the pilots at all?
Not that we know of. Not
Have
that
the
we've got.
pilots come out and spoken and said that they did this? Where is this information coming from?
As far as I know, only to Corbell and Knapp. That's where the information is coming from. Now, of course, hey, if one of these things did speed away, I think that lends us to believe that either drones are off the table or somebody's got a drone way more advanced than we do or that we realize. However, they did say on Weaponized that fighter pilots from other countries were shooting these down as well. And so in their mind, this eliminated the possibility that it came from one of those other countries because they were engaging these UAP as well. As a matter of fact, they were engaging so many, CJ, they literally stopped reporting the UAP sightings.
Yeah. What do we consider a drone these days? Because our military has unmanned aircraft that can fly at very high speeds.
That's a great question. I've wondered the same thing because I feel like when drones originally came out, they were kind of associated with two things: size, small, and unmanned or remote control. And now I feel like the technology has advanced so much, neither one of those or both those don't necessarily apply. We have essentially aircraft-sized unmanned drones, right? Even drones, what they call drones, but then also just straight up, we believe, stealth fighters that don't necessarily have to be manned.
So the drone that originally came out that we all associate with drones, those are now used to do like light shows, like, oh, how fun. Look at these drones making all of these great images in the sky. Like, that's how easily developed those things are now, that companies have thousands of them that they're using to just do light shows. We've gone so far beyond the original drone that people were buying and flying in their backyards and crashing the first time they got them because they were very difficult to fly. I still think they are pretty difficult to fly, but yeah, I mean, who knows what they saw? But unless we have the actual pilots coming out and saying, hey, this is me, I was on that flight, I took that picture, here's what I saw, it all just feels like speculation. And do we have other fighter pilots coming out and saying, I've seen something like it, or this is, I don't know, like actual people that are saying these things and not just group speculation?
Well, I think part of the problem is this: whatever's happening remains classified, and so that any of these military folks are bound, by the classification of the matter. So that's a problem. We have listener SEQUFOW in Australia, and they commented, this image, they are referring to Kermit the Frog UFO, says nothing, need video. Video would be amazing. Was this a quick flash, or was it an object that stayed in the sky for a while? I have better images than this, but many are just quick flashes.
Whoa. Wait a second. Better images that you yourself have taken? And if so, how do we get those posted?
Yeah, let's get your people
or
SEQ
better images that
UFOW
people
with
have
our
sent
people.
you, or better images that you have found elsewhere. Where are these images coming from? That's
Well, they're in Australia too, right? And Australia is
Yeah.
a big topic on this show tonight. And I feel like Australia is a hotbed for UFO activity. Oh, here we go.
Live stream all here on YouTube. Oh, look at your cool logo.
That is cool. It's SEQ UFOW. So everybody needs to check that out. We're going to check that out. Maybe we can get a show together. That would be pretty great. Let's see. They post everything on their channel. That's disclosure right there. Posting everything on their channel. That's something Corbell and Knapp could learn from, and that's from SEQ UFOW here. Just put it out there. That's one of the things that still bothers me, CJ, is we have these folks who just keep teasing us with these pictures and videos and these stories. and we're going to get into more of that tonight, right? But yet the same people keep calling for disclosure from the government and the military. Well, how about you disclose?
Right.
You
And that's
claim
an
to have all this
issue.
information.
Yes, yes. And in doing my research for what we're going to talk about tonight, I got a little frustrated with the exact same thing. Like, oh, I can't tell you because.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
kind of a theme for the night. We've got now Corbell, who, by the way, I'm taking nothing from them. They're legacy keystone figures in ufology, and we've got Ross Coulthart, who is the same situation. They supposedly know some of the biggest secrets in the world, right? But they're not revealing what they know either. So it's hard to know, where one bit of secrecy ends and disclosure begins. Like, what's happening here?
Well, the
So,
frustrating thing too is that I personally feel like I'm on this brink of fully believing that yes, something else is happening because so many people are talking about it, because so many people say that they have evidence. I personally don't feel that I have seen anything in my mind that goes, okay, yes, this is true. I haven't seen it with my own two eyes. I've had a lot of people come on this show and tell us their stories of things that they have seen or talked about even being abducted, right? And every time I listen to them, I believe them. I feel like what they're telling me is true. But I have so much exposure to it, and I still am on that brink of, I don't know what's going on out there. Think about all of the other naysayers, the people that don't believe, that have no intention to believe. And then you have these very big names in ufology. What's the UAP version of that? Uapology? Uapology.
it's a you apology. I'm sorry, we cannot reveal everything we know. We are you
Yes.
apologizing because we ain't telling everything,
You got
folks.
me coughing. Yeah.
You okay over there, CJ? My you apologies to
This
you.
is what happens when I have a cough for like weeks on end. If I start laughing, I just go into a coughing fit. So,
I'm
anyways,
not 100% myself, but
but the
that's
fact that we've got these big names that are just constantly teasing us with information that they don't ever fully share leaves all of the other people that haven't, gone in head first going, no, this is all fake.
yes. And by the way, we officially own the copyright to you apology now, and we intend to be using it quite a bit. Well, some other things that came out in Weaponized with Corbell and Knapp, they did reveal what the primary qualifications for engaging UAP were. And this has been a topic ever since, ironically, the 2023 U.S. Super Bowl. And the two qualifications for engaging UAP by the military, and by engaging, we mean like, heads up, we're fisting to shoot you out of the sky. One, proximity to ground troops. And of course, the Syria image was supposedly taking over an active war zone, I believe.
Mm.
And two, if the target appears to either have a payload or is capable of holding a payload. And that's understandable, of course.
I'm not sure how either of those explain the Chinese spy balloon, which was just drifting across the United States.
Oh, yeah.
That all felt like it was for show.
So that's a great point, CJ. Why do the qualifications for engaging UAP over Syria by the UK fighter jets, why are they so much more stringent than our own qualifications for engaging airborne threats over our own airspace, over the United States? I mean, the spy balloon was gigantic. It was huge.
Yeah.
It probably did have a payload. And it certainly was capable of holding a payload.
Right. And another thing that we don't know, right? They've supposedly recovered it. What have we heard about what was on it?
Right.
Nothing.
Now, also, should it matter if it's proximity to ground troops or proximity to, say, Raleigh? I don't think.
Forget them.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's deja vu with the F-35 that went missing. Like, okay, nothing to worry about, nothing to see here, folks. It might crash into downtown Charlotte, but whatever. We're just out looking for it.
After.
Let us know if you see it anywhere.
Yes. If everybody could just look up And let us know if they see a rogue fighter jet falling out of the sky. That would be great.
Oh yeah, it's very They Live with our friend Rowdy Roddy Piper, rest in peace, right? Comply, wake up,
Right.
shop, go to work,
Mhm.
obey. It's like
Okay.
nothing to see here. So, CJ, I did ask one of our military consultants named Simon. He only goes by Simon.
Simon says,
And Simon says,
what
well, I
about
asked him,
this?
hey, what do you see here? What do you make of this picture? And Simon actually said something profound that made me have a little bit more respect for the picture. And that is, hey, whatever is in this picture could have been jamming our systems.
Hmm.
And thus, the reason for the pixelation.
True, but if that is the case, the pilots would know that, right? They would know that what they took a picture of does not look like the picture that came out on the other side. And you would think that that would be knowledge, like information that they would share, right? Like, I know that this looks like Kermit the Frog, but what we actually saw when we shot at it was, fill in the blank.
Right, but we have, in all fairness, heard from pilots. Well, there have been reports that pilots have said, like supposedly with the Alaska UFO, that it did interfere with our systems, that it did seem to be jamming our system. So,
right, and that's another thing that we heard from the person on the Navy ship, that there was a
yes,
bunch of drones flying around it, and all of a sudden all of their systems were jammed and they couldn't get online in any way.
right. Now, one major regret I have with this picture, I keep thinking back to some of these lawmakers that have claimed to seen top secret photos, and they say, wow, you know what I just saw? I can't describe. I can't place any words to describing what I just saw. Okay, so I'm just hoping, well, you know what? Maybe the unpixelated version of this is something like that.
Or maybe it's Miss Piggy instead of Kermit the Frog.
You apologize, folks, because this is
To be
the
fair, the
best
show
early.
is all things unexplained. We didn't promise to explain anything.
No, right. And so I think it's fair to, acknowledge some of the possibilities here. Is it possible it's a drone? Sure. Spy balloon? Yes, definitely could be something like that. Top secret military tech, for sure. And of course, alien UFO is on the list of possibilities, but unfortunately, there's still all a possibility even with the picture.
Right. Let's move on. That one made
So
me
enough
angry.
of Kermit. We only had one slide on that anyway. So we're on pace for a midnight finish here, folks. Maybe Jeremy or George would join us if we stay on that late. SEQ UFOW says, looks like it's from the Space Invaders game. It totally does. Like they're just
I don't
moving
know
in
that
from
game.
the top of the screen. Well, Space Invaders, Centipede had the little ball. Space Invaders might have had a ball that you move around. But
Was
you
that
just
the
sit
pew, 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 pew one and you just move the gun on the...
close. You have a little spaceship at the bottom of the screen. You can only move it left and right, I think. And
Yeah.
all these aliens are descending from the top of the screen, like down toward the bottom. You just got to.
Nice.
That was one of the original. What did they call it? Like wrist jammers or something. Like you just had to keep like pow 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 pow, tapping the button with your hand. Like that was the key to victory.
Right, but also if this is how far we've come in our ability to take pictures, is that this looks like a game from the 1980s or whatever. This is not a good sign. Not a good sign.
Yeah. It could also be Pitfall Harry, like swinging on a vine over an alligator pen. So that there's still a lot of possibilities. Okay. On to the giant UFO. This is Ross Coulthart's giant
Or so we
UFO.
think. That's how you say his name. But I have literally tried watching every interview he's ever done, and nobody says his name.
For the rest of this show, we're just going to stick with Ross. Australian journalist Ross.
Ross it is.
And he said, people are going to question what I'm about to say. This has been a little bit while back now. But what if that is so big it can't be moved? And I think I have a little video. This video is just a compilation of his comments about a giant UFO. So let's see if I can pull that up.
It can't be moved.
Is that what you're saying, Ross? Is that what you've been told?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
How big is big?
Big. So big, they built a building over it in a country outside of the United States of America. Let's see this investigated. Let's just see what happens. Let's test these allegations before the Congress. Imagine if what Mr. Grush is saying is true. Think about the implications of that. And imagine if, as I've just intimated to you, some of these objects are not capable of being moved because they're too bloody big.
No, seriously though, Ross, that's nuts. So you were told by someone, a trusted source, I imagine, that
multiple.
And the debate, and it was all had very kindly, and you had some supporters, others a little bit more frustrated, was around why exactly you aren't allowed to say where the craft is. And I wonder, is that protecting sources, or what would happen if you came out today on this podcast and said, okay, Andy, the craft is in France?
Let me tell you, I can't tell you the country it's in. It's not America. But what I can tell you is that the place where it is kept is used for another purpose that is a laudatory purpose. That's as much in your interests in your country in the UK as it is in mine in Australia and as it is in America. So the simple reasons are that, there are other uses for the place where this object is stored.
And we could end up with a Storm Area 51 type scenario if you came out and announced it.
I can tell you, mate, that would be a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. I don't want the personnel in those facilities to be hurt, and it could create an international incident.
All right, CJ. So I feel like there's a lot to unpack there.
What word did he use? Laudatory?
Laudatory, yeah.
How do you spell that?
I believe it's Laudatory.
That's what I was looking up. It says of speech or writing expressing praise and commendation. I don't understand.
Well, I think the bottom line is this place has a very important purpose.
Okay.
And I think we have to ask ourselves.
Laudatory purpose.
Right. And I don't think the question is necessarily, is Ross lying?
No, that is the question.
well, sort of. But I honestly think, okay, he believes what his sources are saying.
Mm-hmm.
This is not, of course, his only UFO story. So the question is, what portion of what his sources are telling him is the truth?
Right.
And I find this one so interesting because now he's talked about it more than once and revealed multiple things. And if this is true, okay, this is worthy of digging into. Like somebody, I feel like, could get to the bottom of this, and it starts tonight.
There's a song there, right? I feel like there's a song there. Okay, so giant UFO that can't be moved. There's a building. Okay, where's that word? Do you have it in here? There's a building around it that's being used for another purpose.
Right.
So which of course makes me think of Area 51. Is that why Area 51 was built? Was it built around something that they were trying to hide, and then they started disassembling it right there to try and reverse engineer it? Is that why Area 51 exists?
Could be. Now, of course, he did say it's not in the United States. It's somewhere
right.
outside
I'm just
the United
saying
States. But
if this has happened elsewhere.
Right, for sure. And of course, he could just be saying that to throw us off the track of his sources, right? And some of the things, the major takeaways from what he said is big. So big they had to build a building over it. It's, according to him or his sources, outside the U.S. And he encourages Congress or somebody to investigate this. And he said he's been told by multiple sources and that it does serve a very important purpose, the location. So at least a dual purpose, right? One, to house the UFO, and something of strategic importance, by the way, to Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States.
Okay, so just so that I'm clear, he's saying there is one.
Yes.
We're not talking about multiple UAPs in multiple locations that are being housed in buildings that were built around them. We're talking about just one.
Right. There could be multiple, but he's saying his sources have told him of one giant UFO.
Okay.
So what I thought we would take a look at, CJ, is just break this down and what are some possible locations for this giant UFO. I think the first thing that popped in my mind is Palmdale, California, remote desert areas. That's CJ's hometown. Low population density and limited civilian activity.
Yeah, I mean it's grown since I first moved out there. When we first moved out there, I was an infant, and the entire town exists because of aerospace. So you've got Lockheed Martin out there, you had Rockwell out there for a while, you've still got Northrop Grumman, you've got Boeing, you've got Edwards Air Force Base. All of these places are out there in this nothing town that is essentially desert for as far as you can see. And everywhere you look, there's giant hangars where they're just building aerospace. And there's lots of secrets out there.
Oh, yeah. And not only that, but of course, giant swaths of land in the United States,
Yes.
in the West, and Australia for sure are desert, remote areas. I don't know about the UK. I don't know if the UK has any remote desert areas. If anybody knows of any, certainly let us know. But I do think remote desert areas, is a possibility. As are...
you had, before we move forward,
Sure.
you had messaged me a few weeks ago or maybe months ago. I don't know. My brain doesn't actually work in that way. But you had said, hey, do you know anything about this location out in Palmdale? And it was an older, I can't even remember now. What was it used for? An older airspace of some sort.
Right.
I don't think anything happens out there to my knowledge, but they have old planes and things out there on display in a big hangar. I don't know what's in there.
Well, and of course, this would be one of the theories, right? Like, what better place to hide something than in plain sight?
Mm-hmm.
Like a museum.
Right.
Or somewhere, open to the public. It would be a brilliant move, right?
Yeah.
Now,
What if it's at the Durham Museum of Life and Science and what we think is a fake spacecraft in the middle of that thing is actually real?
Yeah, and you got the Durham Bulls putting out T-shirts with UFOs on them. What's up with
Shooting
that?
them right out of cannons,
I think somebody knows something that we don't know.
They're just teasing us. They're like, oh, these idiots.
Matter of fact, we're gonna examine in a little while. CJ, you and I might be sitting on top of this giant UFO right now, and I kid you not, we might literally be.
Oh,
sitting
yeah, I
on
know
top
where you're going with this. Okay, let's get into
of the giant UFO, but of course, very similar to remote desert regions. It could be in the Arctic or Antarctic,
Yeah.
and we've always heard a lot
I'll
about
never know. I'm
Antarctica.
not going there.
But we do have Noah Stricker on the case, though.
True.
The Michael Jordan of birding.
Poor Noah. It's like,
And I think he's in Antarctica right now without access to anything except penguin technology because he has not replied to my emails for a while.
he was thrown by our questions.
He really was. But I
You
think
thought you were
he's
coming
looking.
on to talk about birds, Betty. We want to know what sort of UFO activity you've seen in Antarctica.
Yeah, I know, right? I did post an incredibly foreboding picture of a penguin colony before he came on the show, so that should have been a clue. But of course, Antarctica, extremely remote, harsh conditions, limited human presence, challenging accessibility, all the things, a top secret UFO cabal could hope for if they're trying to cover up a giant UFO. And of course, not coincidence maybe that we shot a UFO down over near Dead Horse, Alaska, right? And friend of the show, Dane Beck, told us, hey, this is barren. This is It might be really close to Anchorage up there, but you just take a few steps out of town and you're pretty much off the grid. So Antarctica continues to be a potential for alien activity. Makes a lot of sense if you ask me. As does, this one keeps coming up a lot now with USOs, underwater facilities. Well, if it's submerged, this would add definitely an extra layer of secrecy and security, CJ.
Well, yes, and very few people have ever gone underwater, in a real way. Have
Right.
ever really gone down far enough to explore the bottom of the ocean. I mean, that is a very small percentage of people that have done that. But maybe those people that were going to look for the Titanic, maybe they weren't going to look for the Titanic. Maybe that was just a cover up.
It could be. I mean, I know from my point of view, that was a lot of money to pay to go see the Titanic because boring.
Right. And
With-
maybe somebody was on to them and knew what they were trying to do. And maybe that's why they lost their lives.
Yes, very tragic. And according to David Grush, that would not be the first time such subterfuge has taken place in regards to UFOs. And of course, if you missed our episode with friend of the show, adventurer Dane Beck, he used to work on these commercial fishing vessels, right? We're talking incredibly remote areas, hundreds of miles from anything, land, military craft, anything. And him and an entire vessel had a very intense UFO encounter over the water. Not to mention the fact that their grizzled old ship captain constantly regaled them with stories of seeing UFOs over the ocean and told them that he witnessed them literally sucking fish up out of the ocean.
Don't you think that those deep sea fishermen were like, dang it, we've been out here all day and caught nothing. You just hover over the water and suck up all of our fish.
Should have hit it with a harpoon. That's what they should have done. Like,
that's worth shooting at.
Man the wheel, load the harpoon gun. We gotta get this thing. But I did see, I think this was a physics post. It could have been from Neil deGrasse Tyson, as he was briefly talking about physics recently. He likes to talk about a lot of other things.
Yeah.
But water, actually, underwater facilities, was listed as the most plausible location for an alien base. And here's the reason why. Because atmospheres are very unpredictable. The atmosphere of one planet in our solar system is approximately 800 degrees, I believe. The atmosphere of another planet in our solar system, it could be negative 800 degrees. Meanwhile, if you find any planet with water, then in that water, you're going to be within a very tiny spectrum of conditions, of temperature, of what, so aside from like the chemicals in the water and such as that, as far as pressure and temperature, you're talking about a very predictable, stable set of conditions there, which actually makes underwater a much better place for aliens to seek to place a base.
That's true. I never thought about that. But it would also make sense why people see so many UAPs around water.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's been lots of sightings. And thank goodness I can mute my microphone. Otherwise, you would have a very difficult time editing this podcast. I think I have a plague of some sort.
Well, it could be Ebola. I've read a lot about Ebola, and so far you meet several of the conditions.
In that case, it was nice knowing you.
Speaking of editing, wherever you listen to your podcast, you can hear this full episode tomorrow morning when you wake up.
Wow. It's a fast turnaround time.
Yeah, there's going to be very little editing, so we're going to...
I'll go ahead and keep muting myself then.
You apologize now because what you hear tomorrow
what
could
you
be a
get.
little rough. I'm going to call it All Things Unexplained Raw, so it's fine. It's unfiltered, unedited. Another potential place for a UAP, giant UFO, is isolated islands. Pacific, Indian Ocean could host such locations. This ties back into the water, of course. Makes a lot of sense too. There are islands that the general public cannot access or are not allowed access to.
Yeah.
And
If
there's
I'm going to
also
make
islands.
that, cross universe journey, I'm going to need an island to chill on for a little bit before I start meeting the local peeps.
Oh yeah, and of course, if the island is controlled by the U.S., then no other countries are checking it out either.
Yeah.
So
Also, you know who owns their own island? Richard Branson, who's also now trying to go to the moon. Connection?
probably. I'm not signing up for his flight to the moon either, by the way. And by the way, what's the odds that this whole moon mission crap is just a cover up, right, for something else?
High, very high.
Very high, yeah. Like, there's more to the story of this Apollo stuff. Not going to get off on this again.
This Apollo stuff.
Yeah.
Boy.
But, okay, why? NASA flew themselves to the moon in the 60s, but they got to hire Richard Branson and Elon Musk to get there in 2023? What's up with that? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Space Cowboys right there. Space Cowboys, the remake.
Some people call them the Space Cowboys.
I'd have to do this show alone.
So,
To be continued.
thanks. Like, share, follow, comment, subscribe, support. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you
Okay.
want it about
Yes,
the Alaska.
we do.
Okay.
More at BigfootUFO.com.
All things unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.